Hello, everybody, and welcome to another class from Spindle TV. If you're new here tonight, my name is Laney Shaughnessy. I'll be your host for the evening. I hope everybody's doing well. First off, first order of business, I want to thank everybody that reached out to me on Facebook 2 days ago for my birthday and wished me a happy birthday. Thanks for that. I got a lot of love on Facebook and from all of the Spindle TV members and a lot of the viewers and friends from old and new. So thank you all for that. And for those of you in the chat, Ronnie Probert, yes, I did have a great birthday. It was relaxing. It was enjoyable. And yeah, I love getting all the love on Facebook. Everybody was showing me some happy birthdays. There was all kinds of cool stuff. So good stuff. But tonight we are going to dive into VCarve Inlays, but not your standard or traditional VCarve Inlays. We're going to talk deep VCarve Inlays, inlays that you would want more depth into the wood. You'd want that inlay to be recessed into that wood more because of the particular environment, such as cutting boards or butcher blocks and things like that. Things that are going to get some abuse or they might get juice or water contact, something that a very small or very shallow inlay could, swell or pop out or whatever the case may be. These deep inlays are going to, withstand the test of time and all the abuse and stuff. Now, by all means, I am not the first to talk about deep inlays, and I'm not going to be the last, but I will tell you the best, in my opinion. There is a video that when I was learning about this topic and really getting into VCarve Inlays a long time ago, a YouTuber by the name of Stefan Versailles. It's either Stefan Versailles or it's Stefan Versailles. It's a double L in there. I don't know if it's pronounced or not, but Stefan Versailles, we'll just say Versailles. He had a deep dive into deep inlays. So deep inlays, a real detailed look. I think detailed look or something along those lines was his video. And if you're ever searching for it on YouTube, it's the video with the YouTube button is the inlay on the thumbnail. Stefan did a phenomenal job with his graphics, explaining the female side of the inlay and the male side, explaining the depths and what we're looking for, and also his illustrations as well as his verbal explanation. It's phenomenal. Now, you're going to hear, information from me tonight, and we're going to talk about it and stuff. And a lot of it is going to be, not necessarily verbatim, but it's going to be a regurgitation of Stefan's lesson. I really think that anyone that's interested in deep inlays and, for butcher blocks and cutting boards and things like that, it is a video that is absolutely should be on your watch list. Now stick around for those of you that are going to be watching through this. We're going to try to make this, straight and to the point, but stick around to the end. I'm going to show you some cool techniques in the software that were passed on to me this past week. I want to give a big shout out to one of my Spindle TV exclusive members, Brooks Martin, who had received some information from Mike Meslick. And I always get Mike's last name, Meslick. I always get his last name messed up, but Mike is, he's a Vectric guy from way back, with his projects and tutorials and everything. But Mike shared some information with Brooks Martin. Brooks Martin shared some information with me. And now I am going to share that information with you. And it's a pretty cool technique to get some very cool 3D preview looks for things like, inlays and cutting boards. So stick around for that, short bit of tutorial and information. All right. All right, Mark. Awesome. I asked Brooke to come on and, teach it live. And, Unfortunately, he's not set up for streaming, but, you know, gave his blessing to pass on the information. He'd love to see it spread. And Mike, you know, gave him the, you know, the how-to and stuff, you know, as far as, you know, here's how you do this, and here, this is a cool technique. And yeah, it is a cool technique, and you're going to see it if you stick around. So what I'd like to do is we're going to switch over to the Vectric program. We're going to talk about inlays. First of all, I have some vectors already laid out for this process. And I want to take just a short, brief moment to show how these vectors got created, how we got to the point of where we're at when you see the screen that's going to pop up in just a few minutes. So without any further ado, let's get started right away. So here we go. We're going to switch over to camera 2. And let's get me, I'll go down to the left side today. Awesome. And let me make a little bit of a slight adjustment. Let's make a slight adjustment to, there we go. And then on my computer, let me turn on my mouse highlighter so we can see where the mouse is. Sometimes, most of the time, if I don't move too fast, I'll try to paste this because a lot of information I want you to learn, and it's good information and everything. So let's see if we can get this ball rolling. So what you're going to see on the screen is basically, let's call it our cutting board layout, right? So we are looking at a project that is 18 inches in length, about 15 inches wide, 3/4 inches thick. But of course, you know, we can go 1 inch, 1.5, 1.25, whatever you want, you know, depending on, you know, the size of your butcher block or cutting board. I'm just going 3/4 for right now. We're going to simulate kind of an end grain cutting board. And that's what we're working with. I will be zeroing out the Z on the material surface. We're going to start in the center for the XY0. Now, when it comes to these inlays, we're going to be doing multiple color inlays and everything. And we'll probably be working with a glue up of, in this simulation, the main cutting board will probably be a walnut, possibly a dark walnut end grain cutting board. We're going to have some maple end grain. So we'll have a glue up of maple that is going to be part of the mells. The metal will get cut off of. So we'll have some maple. We may even throw in some cherry as well, but we also might have a little bit of light walnut to kind of just a light contrast, not too much. And that's kind of what we're working with. So think about that mindset and stuff. And let's take a look at the vectors. Now, even though I'm going to work with a very high resolution, even though there's no models in here, but stick around. You're going to see a cool technique on using the model making power of Aspire to create some very cool look on your end grains and stuff. Now, everything I'm doing up to that little tip at the end, everything I'm doing can be done in Desktop Pro or Aspire when it comes to these inlays and this information. This is very important information. But let's talk about these vectors here for a minute. I want to bring my inspiration up, the picture that I used for inspiration. Let's bring that in, and let's kind of let's get that image over here, and let's kind of zoom in and take a look at it. So what we're looking at here is, you know, like I said, kind of a dark walnut, a little bit of a light walnut, maybe some maple, cherry, and, you know, some other things. But you can see this. Now, if you're ever looking for inspiration on inlay patterns, there is a Google search. I did a Google search for, let me get my bookmarks popped up here. Other bookmarks, Build It TV. I did a search for inlay vectors, if you will, on Google. And the patterns that come up. There are some very cool patterns and things, and there's pages and pages of, you know, inlay type of patterns and things that I think would be very awesome on a cutting board. And I really like this image. We're going to probably, maybe at the end, we'll draw another different pattern and stuff. But I want to take this image. I'm not going to trace this. I'm going to draw this from scratch using the same kind of concept as inspiration. I'm going to create this from scratch using the, you know, the Vectric software and everything. And I want to show you how I go from this image as my inspiration to these vectors that I'm going to be using in the project. All right, that's where we're gonna start. Stick around. Let's see what we can do. All right, let's do this. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to make this layer. I want to show only this layer right now, this blank layer here. And I've already got the visual of the photo in my mind, so I don't need it at this point. But this is going to be my class vector layer. And I just want to get you to the point of making the vectors, because, you know, before you can do the inlays, we need that. And then, so let's take this step by step, but we'll try to not make it drag out too long like I usually do. All right. So first things first, the center part of that image had a rectangle that was turned 45 degrees to create kind of like a diamond pattern. And for those of you that need, that want just a real quick glance again, so we're talking about that center pattern. There's a circle, there's some water drops or teardrops, and then some rays and everything coming out. So that's what we're working towards, okay? Let's turn that off and let's use our mind's eye and recreate that. So I'm going to start off with a rectangle, and I'm going to start off with a 2x2 rectangle right in the center of the board. And I'm going to double click on that rectangle and use my number 9 key, and I'm going to turn it 45 degrees. Boom, done. All right, now I'm going to come in here, and right in the center, I'm just going to drag out a circle. Now, as far as the size of this circle, it really just kind of depends on aesthetically what you think looks good. It also depends on the area that you have to work with. So for right now, I'm going to go with a 4 3/4 circle there, and then I'm going to just drag out another circle and just kind of give myself a little, what's like a little band, if you will, right? So imagine that in between those two vectors right there, that's going to be an inlay. So that'll look good there. Now the rays and everything, I'm going to take a rectangle tool, and I'm going to just draw kind of like a narrow rectangle. And again, I'm going to hit the number 9 on my keyboard to turn that rectangle like at a 45. And I'm going to grab it right on the center on this bottom span here. I'm going to grab it right on the center, and I'm going to pop it right on the center and snap it to the center of my project. And with the center there, let me see, let me come in here, snap right there, wonderful. I'm going to bring this band, and what I want to do, let's start with one thing so it doesn't throw your mind off and everything. That image, right, is kind of a rectangular shape, and that's what we're going with rectangle. So let me draw the rectangle, because you might, you know, wonder why I'm off to the side. Well, my cutting board is rectangular shape. Let's start with a square. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to just start with a square. It doesn't matter as long as it's the same size. I'm going to go 12 by 12. 12 by 12. And let's get it centered. 0 on the X, 0 on the Y. Okay. And that's going to be my rectangle that I'm kind of working around and stuff like that. So on this rectangle here, I don't want it that wide. It's kind of beefy, right? So let's go back to that, and let's hold down the shift key. If I hold the shift key, it'll do both sides at the same time. So I'm going to grab it on this side, hold the shift key, and I'm going to bring that in just a little bit, about like that. Looks good. Now here, I'm going to go into node editing mode. So I can come over here to the node editing tool, or it's the N for node on the keyboard for the keyboard shortcut if you want to do that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to insert a point right in the center, and then I'm going to delete the 2 corner points. And so what this is going to do is it's going to be kind of like a, you know, coming out like a spear, like an arrow or something. And that looks fine for me. Now I'm going to take that shape and I'm going to rotate it around that center point 12 times. So I'm going to use the circular array tool. And if I double click on this little dot right here, it'll change that center point, that pivot point, rotation point to 0, 0. And I want 12 copies going 360 degrees around, and I'm going to create those rays. Okay. Now, looking at this, little skinny, right? Just a little bit skinny. So what I want to do is I want to beef it up just a little bit. I'm going to hit undo, and I want to widen this a little bit. So I'm going to go back into node editing mode, and let's back up just a moment. I want to go just a little bit wider. Hold that shift key down and just kind of let me get out of this tool. There we go. Always close your tools when you're not working in them. Let me go in here. I just want to make that just slightly a little bit wider. I think I'm good with that now. Now, once again, N for node editing. Delete this point. And this one here. All right. And get rid of that point. Don't know why there's a point there, but there is. Okay. I'm good with that. I think that'll look good. All right. One more time. We're going to take our part. We're going to rotate it around its center, 0, 0, 12 times. All right. You're probably thinking, that doesn't look any different. Doesn't look any wider. It is. All right. So that's that. Now on my rectangle here, I'm going to offset inward. And I want to offset inward. I want to go 1/4 of an inch, 0.25. All right. And then from that outside rectangle again, I want to offset inward. Let's go 3/4. And let's see here. Let's go 1 inch instead of 3/4. 1 inch. Yeah. And then we're going to go another 1/2 inch from that one. So 0. Actually, we're going to go another 1/4 of an inch from that one. Yeah, I'm good with that. All right. So I have pretty much all the elements except for the teardrop, right? The teardrop is next. So let's come over here, and I'm going to start off with a circle tool. Now there's a lot of ways to create a, kind of a teardrop, kind of get that effect or that shape. This is kind of my approach. It's probably a little bit of a long way around, but it gets me from point A to B. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to then go into node editing mode, and I'm going to kind of pull this node down a little bit. And then I'm going to kind of pull this in here, 0.2 inches. And I'm going to pull this one in 0.2 inches. And then from there, I'm going to come over and make these arcs kind of a Bezier curve on those two arcs right there. And then I'm going to smooth these 2 points right here. So I'm going to, it should let me. Let's see if it's going to let me. It's saying it's not going to let me. So that's all right. Let's go to a Bezier curve there and then smooth that point. That'll work. Let's go back over here, make that a Bezier and smooth that one. So it wouldn't let me smooth because I kind of had a hard line arc to that Bezier curve and it wasn't letting it smooth. So just to switch back there. Now I'm going to take this. I want this to be an arc. I don't want it to be a Bezier curve. It looks more, for me, I like that kind of hard round bottom and then in. You could do it a lot of different ways, like I said. So I'm going to go back to an arc on these two. And I'm okay with this shape, but probably it's a little bit dramatic, right? And the points here, I'm just going to pull them back. Now, there's no real set distance and everything that I'm looking for. All I want is kind of a nice flow, just a nice flow. And I could, just try to match things up visually. Let me go back there and stuff and just kind of, eyeball it, right? If I wanted to make sure that I'm 100% uniform left and right side or like mirror images of each other, I can cut this right down the middle and flip one side over, and I could regroup it back together so it's identical, right? But I'm drawing this and I kind of, in a sense, I kind of want it to be a little bit organic. You can almost see there's almost like a little heart shape right here, and everything. That's because there's a point there, right? Now, if I delete that point and I pull that up, that's going to pretty much get me where I want on my shape. And again, if I'm not thrilled with my shape or anything like that, then I can make the adjustment. Now, it is important to me that this node over here and this node here are aligned with one another, right? So I will select them and I will hit the letter Y on the keyboard just to make sure they're level up and down. I am okay. I'm not great with this, but I'm okay with that. Just pull that a little bit. And we'll just call that good for what I want. Okay. I'm okay with that. I'm not, it's not the most beautiful teardrop in the world, but it is close enough for what I want. And I made it. So it's organic. All right. So now that I have that, I'm going to mirror that around my center point 12 times. So let's go into our tool here. Let's select this. Let's go to our circular array tool. And again, I want to be 0, 0. That's my pivot point, my center of my board. And I want to go 12 times around, and that's going to kind of fill in those spaces there, right? In between those rays. All right. So we're getting there, right? And now as soon as I'm done with getting these on their different layers so we can start trimming and cleaning them up and everything, I'm going to answer the questions that you guys may have on the that you might be asking or anything like that. So what I want to do now is in my my layers, I want to kind of separate these because I'm going to be using some of the vectors to trim to. I want to keep some of them and that kind of thing. So it's very important that I kind of keep my originals intact, and then I'll copy everything to a different layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, let's close this tool. I'm going to select all of these vectors here, and I'm going to copy them to a new layer, and I'm going to just call this my class trim layer. Class trim layer. All right. I'm going to give it a color of kind of red. Okay. And then I'm going to come in. Let's turn that layer off for right now. And then I'm going to take all of my rays. So I'm going to select all the rays. And I'm going to move them and the reason why I'm moving them is I made a copy of everything to its own layer. So I have one layer with everything on there, right? And so I want to move these to a new layer, and I want to call this my class rays. And I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to select my inner, we'll call it a diamond because it's kind of 45 degrees. It's not really a diamond, but we'll call it that. I want to move that to a new layer. I'll call this my inner diamond. We can turn that one off. My circle, we'll move that. Layers is very powerful for organizing and separating things. So let's call this my class inner circle. Okay. Then my water drops, we'll move that to a layer. Class. And the reason why I'm calling them class is because I already have these layers created for that original that you saw when we first started. Water drops. And then my inner border, we'll call that the class inner border. Class inner border. And then this will be my class outer border. All right, so now we have class outer border. We'll call it that. Okay, so now we have all of these layers are moved to that. So I come in here and I have, let's go over to my layers tab over here so I can kind of work. But I've got my outer border, inner border, my water drops, my circles, my inner diamond, and the rays, right? So I got all of those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn those back off. And then I'm going to go to the class trim layer. That's where I have all those copies and everything. And I'm going to use these vectors, make sure that layer is active when you're working in it. But I'm going to use these vectors to trim up what I don't want and keep what I do. So first things first, on my rays, I want you to look at this image again. Let's go to our bitmap image once again, and I want you to kind of look at this. Let's click on it to make it look active. Now, here they've got a little bit of a decorative kind of touch. The four corners are on top of the circles here, and then underneath that center diamond, right? So those four corner points are kind of coming over. The rays on the kind of the two on the top, two on the sides, two on the bottom, they're going under the circle, right? So the circle inlay is in here. So this circle inlay has been divided up into, four parts basically. And then we have another ray going over here. Well, when we are cutting this, right, it all depends on the order that when we're actually doing the inlay, it depends on the order that we're making the inlay, right? So let's say that I came in here and did all of my smaller rays first, Okay. And I carved the pockets. I carved the mills. I glued the mill into the pockets. I kind of milled everything down. And I've got these kind of these inner, the two on the top, two on the bottom, two on the side, these rays kind of going full. Well, once that kind of settles up and stuff, now I'm ready to kind of create the next inlay. So I'm going to cut the pocket right through those inlays I just put in. And let's say I cut the pocket for this inner diamond, right? So I cut that. It cuts that pocket out right through the inlays. And then I stick in my mill it down, flush with the surface, let that glue settle up. And then I start working around. So we're going to be cutting, filling, clamping, letting it kind of cure and dry. Then we're going to move on to the next layer of our cuts and things when we're doing VCarve inlays and everything. And so I like the way that the four corners are going over and then the two are going down. I'll stick with that theme and that pattern. But first, I want to kind of create my individual vectors. Notice that these vectors go over this band. Now, I'm going to create individual vectors for the little tip that I'm going to show you tonight on a visual look of like kind of a 3D. And then I'm actually going to create the vectors for the inlays for the toolpaths, because we will be creating certain particular vectors, and we don't need to trim them because we're going to be milling away what we don't need and filling it with another color. Don't want to confuse you on that, but let's get through it and you'll see what I'm talking about. So here, the inner rectangle or the outer border rectangle, that's my trim border for these rays here. So I'm going to go into my scissor tools and we're going to start off with the large rays here. So these don't get used here. They're going to kind of come up to this corner right here. This inner vector doesn't get used there. And this inner vector is going to be trimmed away there. All the way to here. It's going to cross over to here. Now, here is where I don't necessarily need an inlay to come into this fine of a point. I just need it to cross underneath this inlay, right? So I'm not going to bring it all the way to the point. What I am going to do is I'm going to take this rectangular inlay and I'm going to offset it slightly inward to be my trimming vector. So I'm going to offset this inward and I'm just going to go, let's say, 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to use that as my trim vector. So everything in the middle of that 1/8 of an inch can go away. I don't need anything in there. It can go away. Now, here in between, I need that and that gone. That's going to make this, that's going to be the end of that ray there. So I'm going to go through and create all the ends. And all I'm doing is trimming the line in between them. All right. So now my rays have an end, right? They stop, right under where that inlay for that center diamond is going to go, right on top of them, right? So it'll conceal that. They're going to be milled away anyway. So that's going to be that. Now, my corners are going to go all the way to this, and then they're going to go under, and all of these are also going to go under. So that one's done. Let's do the other corner. Let's focus on the corners for right now. So this goes away. This inner one goes away. That goes away. Here and here go away. And actually here as well. Let's do that for that other corner. I forgot to do that one. There we go. Okay. 2 more corners. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. those two. Get rid of the lines. All we're doing is getting rid of the lines in the middle of them. Okay, one more. Get rid of that. And again, we're just getting rid of the lines right down the middle. Now, remember, I'm trimming away these vectors, but I need these vectors again at some point to trim and make other vectors. You'll see in just a minute, I got to make my circles and stuff. But if I'm trimming away the lines on my circles, what's really closing that off there, right? So I'm going to be using these a couple of times to create the final set of vectors that I need. So all four of my rays are done, except for right here. It's an open vector because I need to cut on this side and that side, on this side and that side on the outside line, here and here, there and there. So now when I select this vector, it's one closed vector. We can look in our join tool and see that it is a closed vector. So I'm going to take these four corner vectors that have already been trimmed and created. They're going to be my four corner vectors. I'm going to move them. I'm going to copy them to a new layer. And this layer is going to be my inlay vectors. Corner inlay vectors. Let's try that. Corner inlay vectors. And I'm going to give all those, everyone that's done, kind of a unique color. So I know I'm going to give them like kind of like a blue or a purple or something, so that not that color. That color doesn't show up at all. Hold on a second. Let me give it a color that sticks out to everybody. All right, blue. It's not the best color in the world, but it'll stick out. All right, so those are done, and I'm going to, these are copies, right? So I can turn them off. Now, here I need, let's do the inner rays. Now, on the inner rays, none of those get used, none of that, none of this. This, that goes away, that and that. So that one, now these go under, so that's gone. All right, so we have this and this. Goes to here. So we'll get rid of that circle there and there. That's going to create that inlay. And again, we're going to just use one ray. I should do that for the rays, and then I'll make the ones for our little visual. Let me do that. So this is going to be a full inlay here. And then it's going to get milled out for the circle that's going to go on top of it. So everything blends nice and beautifully and all. So that, we'll leave that vector just like that. And it should be one closed vector. It is. All right. And this should be one closed vector. So those two will be good. We're going to take and do the same thing up here. Trim. There's going to be two sets of vectors, one for our visual, one for the actual, what we're actually doing the tool pathing on. All right, so that trim goes away in between there and the lines inside. That, and that. Phone's going crazy. Phone's going crazy. Okay, so those two are done. Over here, we're going to take this, get rid of that line, get rid of this line in the middle, get rid of that line in the middle, and that. just like we did with the corners. These again are inlay vectors, not our little visual vectors. Just now getting rid of things that don't need to be there anymore. Make sure there's no lines in the middle. Wonderful. Okay, now I can take these two, shift key, these two, and I'm going to call these my short rays. So I'm going to move them to, I'll move them to a new layer. We'll call these my inlay short rays. Okay. My teardrops, don't need to do anything with them. The rectangle, that vector, that remnants of a rectangle that's left, that's trash. It's no longer needed for anything. So we can get rid of these vectors, get rid of what we don't need because we have our original. Oh, don't do that. Okay. Now, the vectors here, going back up to our trim layer that we're at here right now. Remember, I've got my water drops. I've got all my masters and stuff and things in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my circle. And let's get rid of these lines on this circle. Bear with me a second. And I'm going to turn on my circle, class inner circle here, the original. And I'm going to copy that back down to the layer that we're working on, which is the class trim layer. And what that's going to do for me is, let me turn off that. What that's going to do for me, it's going to bring that circle back. Now, if you remember, if we look at that image once again, that bitmap image, the circle is this ray is on top. So this right here is one segment. I need that to be a closed vector, right? I need this to be a closed vector, this one and this one. I need 4 segments on that. Now, technically, these inlays right here, the corner ones, they go over everything except for that center diamond, if you will. So I'm really going to be, for my inlay, I'm going to be inlaying that circle as a whole, and then I'll be milling the pockets for those rays that are going to overlay it. This way there's no gaps or anything like that. But I need my visual layers as well. So what I'm going to do is, let's turn that off and come back over here, is I'm going to use, in my class vectors, let's turn that off. I'm going to get rid of everything that I don't need. The teardrops are just sitting there because they don't, nothing interacts with them or overlaps with them and stuff. All right. So trim those 2 lines, those 2 lines, those 2, and those 2. Now I have, let's take my vectors that I'm going to be using for my visual. I have my corner vectors. Where are they at? Let me find my corners now. Class. Inlay raise. There we go. Now on that inlay raise corner, this goes away. That's trash. Got to make that borders next. Almost forgot what my border name was called. And let's turn off this vector for a minute so I can see all the stuff that doesn't belong in here. Get rid of anything, because we've made copies and copies for trimming and stuff like that. Get rid of anything that's not important. These are my long corner rays, corner inlay vectors, corner rays, whatever you want to call them. These are my short ones. Okay. The class border, this border right here, that's my outer border. But the inner one, I need to make a copy of this. Copy to the trim layer, because that is, if we look at the image again, these inlays are over that. So those vectors right there, I need little closed, these rectangles and everything, because all the rays go over that outer border. So all of these rays go over the outer border. So I'm going to take all of these and copy them, because those are my originals. Those are my masters. I'm going to copy them to that trim layer. And what I should have, if I turn everything off but the trim layer, I can get rid of, let me get rid of the teardrops, because that'll probably confuse people. The teardrops don't need to be, or the water drops don't need to be there. They're just, they're there because I copied everything over to that layer originally, but they don't get trimmed. So let's get rid of those. So on this border here, making sure that my class trim layer is active. Make sure it's active when you're trimming so you don't accidentally throw stuff on. Putting stuff on the wrong layer, that's where the nightmare, right now you might be confused. I know where everything is on these layers, but if I screw up and trim one of these and they go over onto another layer, then I'm just like lost. But I can turn on and off everything, and I can see. That's why colors are helpful too. So you can add different colors so you can see what's on different layers. But on this, what I want is basically I am trimming this away to create those two ends, trimming all of this stuff away here, all of that, and in between there to create that one, to create that, closing off those vectors, right? So getting rid of inside and outside lines, getting rid of that corner. Getting rid of the outside and inside lines. Coming in. Here and here. All right. We're going to be done with this. This is my last trim. And then we can move on. Now, I'm holding down the left mouse button when I move over a line. As long as that left mouse button is held down, any line that it intersects or travels or that it runs into, it's going to trim to the nearest intersection. All right. So now that is my border, right? So if I were to actually physically turn on the short rays and long rays, now you can see how, they overlap, and it gives that visual, that mental visual that those rays are overlapping that border, right? Now we're going to inlay that entire border as a whole. So there, we have our teardrops are going to get inlaid as a whole, the border, the rays, and then for every inlay that we do, one step at a time, we're going to be milling away and filling in with the other inlay. And when it's all said and done, it's going to look just like that picture. All right, so let's turn off my originals. So the rays, these blue lines, those are the actual inlays for the toolpath. This is get rid of this. Okay. Now, in the picture, the border is kind of a light grain wood, or when I say light, lighter than the darker walnut, right? But the centers, that center circle, and that is maple. It kind of really gets that center to pop right on that contrast of color. So I'm going to take this inner circle, and let me do one last thing. Let me grab my inner diamond, and let me copy that to the trim layer. All right, so these two things are going to be maple. So for our visual, this is visual. I'm going to move them to a layer, and this is going to be my maple inlays. We're going to take these, we'll call them our light walnut inlays. Okay. Now, I can use, the reason why it's only some of them are on the layers for the visual and all is because the other ones that aren't interacting, like the teardrops, I don't need to put them on their own special layer. I can use the same vectors to achieve the two things that I want to do with them. They're not interacting with anything else. Technically, that the diamond, the center diamond, wasn't really interacting with anything else. It was just the rays, the circles, and that outer border. So let's take a look at, let's now jump into the lesson. What we have is, for all intensive purposes, let's go to our short rays and long rays, our maple inlays, and our light walnut inlay, and then our teardrops, I keep calling them teardrops, but our water drops. These are the vectors, okay? These are the vectors that we're going to be using. And then the what we're going to do is, let's talk about the VCarve inlays now, the deep inlays. We've got the vectors created. Now let's kind of talk about our inlays and make the toolpaths. So let's go with a new layer here. We'll call it Inlay Explain. Inlay Explain. All right. If I were to draw this out, if I were to draw out and simulate kind of a deep inlay, imagine, if you will, that we have let's kind of (1.1) in that direction, 1.1 in that direction. Let's take our scissors And let's trim that away. This is our female pocket deep inlay. Now, critical. Shallow inlays, you'll see tutorials all over the web and stuff. And we'll go to your questions here in just a second, guys. Shallow inlays, you'll see a lot of tutorials using 60 and 90 degree V-bits. And while those are okay for just your standard inlays that aren't going to go very deep, we're going to deep inlay. Our inlay is going to be about 3/8 of an inch deep. We're going to be filling our inlay with about 3/8 of an inch of material. The male plug is going to be about 3/8 of an inch deep into our material and stuff. Not our typical shallow. So a 60 degree or a 90 degree is not going to give us the depth we need. I am going to strongly recommend a 15 degree V-bit for any of your deep inlays. And let me get to a page here real quick. Bookmarks, Build It TV. Bring over an Amazon page onto the screen. Now, Genmitsu, not only do they make pretty cool, CNC carvers and stuff like that, they also have router bits. Now, their 15 degree router bit, the reason why I kind of like their router bit and everything is the cutter goes right to the shank. Most cutters you'll see, they'll come and then the shank will widen and everything. And that's all well and good. This is a 20 degree V-bit that the mouse is over right here. And that's a great detail bit for fine lining and stuff like that. The one to the left here is a 15 degree V-bit, the bit that I recommend. Now, this bit set it's got a 15, a 20, a 60, and a 90, right? And both the 20 and the 15, 7.5 degree side angle, 15 degree included angle. Same with the 20, and the bit, I like that it goes around and it goes right to that 1/4 inch shank. It's a nice transition and stuff. It's a really, really good looking bit. And the 15 degree is what I would recommend for those deep inlays, getting down into those deep inlays and everything. We're going to get more depth and more fill and everything. We're not going to, if you try to do a deep inlay with a 60 or 90, it's not going to happen because you're not going to have enough cutter length to get down into those depths before it gets to the shank. I mean, you can look at the images here, how deep I can go before I get into that shank, right? So I can get much more depth on that VCarve inlay with a 15. So I'm going to recommend get your hands on a 15 degree. And this particular bit set's like $40, right? I don't have any ties or affiliation with Genmitsu. They're actually our competition with Digital Woodcarve, right? But it's a very fine bit set. Nothing wrong with it at all. Love the 15 degree out of it. And yeah, I mean, but you can go to Amazon. There's 15 degrees all over the place, but this is just a recommendation. All right, let's get back to business now. The 15 degree V-bit's going to give us, the depth that we need. Now, so this is our female cut, and let's talk in terms here for a moment that our overall pocket depth here, let's say that our overall depth is about, of the female pocket, is about 0.3, 0.3, 0.32, 0.31 inches deep. Let's look at the male part of this. So on the male part, bear with me while I draw out the male part. All right, a little bit of node editing. Let's kind of pull this in here. Now, you have to imagine, use the imagination that this plug here, the sides are actually making contact with the walls, right? I'm leaving a little bit of space so that you can tell the difference between the male and the female. But let's pretend that it's filling the void. Okay. All right. Let's agree to agree on that. All right. Let me trim this away. All right. So let's go into node editing one more time. Okay. So on a deep inlay, we have the male plug, okay, which is this part. And then we have the female pocket. All right. And so when we're coming in, when those two parts, make contact with each other, when you press it in and those sides of that male plug come in and make contact with the sides of the female plug, and there's no more that it can go and everything, what we want to end up with is a glue gap, a very shallow glue gap. Let's shoot for a 0.03, like a 32nd, or 1 millimeter if you're into millimeters and all. We're going to shoot for that 0.03 depth there. And then we also want to have some gap in between where when it's fully seated, that I could get a saw blade in if I was using a bandsaw or a hand saw or something like that to kind of cut and trim. We'll just call that kind of that saw kerf space. We'll kind of call it that. And we want to leave ourselves, some decent amount of room there, at least a 1/16 of an inch, something that a blade can go through. Now, if we're taking our CNC machine, like if we're doing all this on the table, right? We're doing our glue ups and stuff, and we're coming back to a known position and we're surfacing and we're doing it all over again. We can set up a jig to where we would be able to take this board off the table, do the glue up, bring it back, and then surface it. And when I say surface it, pretend that our router bit here, inside of our collet, all right? So our bit here is, coming in and surfacing this down to just a little bit right above the surface, right? We're not coming right to our full surface, but we're milling off all that waste with our CNC, right? We're coming in and surfacing that down to, just the finest 20 thousandths of an inch or something. We're leaving a little bit of freshness there, right? And then from there, we can start coming in and, making our other inlays and all. So we could use our CNC to surface it down. We can use a hand saw, a band saw, whatever the case may be. I like using the CNC. So we need a little bit of breathing room here. Now, let's say for measurement purposes and everything, that from here, let's call the top of our female plug Z0, and let's take the male out. Let's take the male out and let's rotate it around and let's move it over to the side here. So we got our male and female. And if you want to see a really, really good explanation, remember Stefan's video. He goes into full detail on this stuff. All right. Let's say that the top of our material here, that is going to be our Z0. And so I'll use a little bit of text. And let's go with 0.25. That's too small for you guys. Let's go 0.5. This is our Z0 as far as the software is concerned. Let's try that again. Up here. Z0. Let's use a regular font. All right. So the top of our female plug here is Z0. Now, the same applies to the top of our, well, technically it's the bottom of our male plug, but we cut it upside down. When we're cutting the male plug out, the bottom is the top. And this top is the Z0 position. So that's our Z0 there for the male plug. This line right there. Okay. Now, from here to the bottom of the pocket, let's call that 8 millimeters for those of you that are in millimeters, or 0.314 if you're in inches. We can make up numbers. We can do whatever, but I'm going to try to not make it to where it's too math heavy. But let's go with, we'll just go with solid numbers, 0.3. Okay. So the right here is going to be 0.3 inches deep. Okay. So 0 and 0.3. Now, normally on a regular inlay, we are trying to match. We're trying to match that 0.3 for our male plug. We want to kind of get down in there and everything, but in this case, we need a bit of a glue gap, right? So our depth and everything that the plug is going to be filling, we're going to be going down, and I'm trying to do millimeters and inches and all, but let's say 7 millimeters deep, right? Which would equate to about 0.27. So let's call it 1/4 of an inch. So our plug is, let me get my text in here. We'll call it 1/4, just 0.25. Okay. And so if our plug is coming down to that point when it's fully inserted at 0.25, then that 0.05 difference from 0.25 to 0.3 is our glue gap, right? So 0.05 is our glue gap there. And then we need a little bit of material, or a little bit of space when our plug is going fully in. We need a little bit of space in between the male plug and the female, when they kind of fit together. So that air gap, we'll just call it an air gap. Let's say that we want that to be around at least 1/16 of an inch. Okay. So I'll draw a line first. And let's say that this air gap in between right here will be 0.0625. Okay, so 1/16 of an inch. So with that, we kind of have our numbers and everything. So when it comes to the VCarve inlay, when I'm doing the pocket, no problem with this depth, right? My full pocket is going to cut to 0.3 on the female. So I'm going to have a 0 start depth, a 0.3 flat depth when we're looking at the toolpath. So let's look at the toolpath. And I almost went to the old way. Let's go to the new way. We have a VCarve inlay, but I will look at the old way too for those that don't have version 12 yet. But here, our pocket depth, the new VCarve inlay, it labels the space, right? That S, they call it a surface gap, right? So you can see, I don't know how well y'all can see, there's a little diagram here in this VCarve inlay, and they're showing that gap between when that male plug comes in, that gap that we have it set at a 16th. They're calling that the surface gap, right? So a 16th of an inch is our surface gap. Now, the depth, the D, which is the pocket depth, right? That's the depth of the female pocket. So the pocket depth is 0.3. And then the G in the little graphic on the new inlay, they're calling that the glue gap. The G, we want that to be 0.05, right? And so that's based on those numbers and everything, that's what I've kind of drawn out here, right? And what that does is by plugging in those three numbers in this new VCarve Inlay toolpath, it's going to calculate the male and the female vectors, right? It's gonna calculate the male and the female toolpaths and everything. It says, all right, the plug destination. Do you want that? You don't want it on the same sheet. You want the plug destination on another sheet. Like if you've already got that laid out and stuff, it's going to draw the vectors because the male plug, whatever the design is on this design here, it's going to draw those male vectors with a border around them. So it creates that negative cut or positive cut. I don't know how you would want to say that, but it creates that cut so that those male parts are sticking up so they go down in. And that's all well and good, but we're dealing with a deep inlay. So let's look at how the Vectric inlay toolpath creates it. Let's look how it creates the toolpaths and everything. And then let's look at how it sets up the start depth and the cut depth for the male. For the female, no problem. It's going to take passes based on what my bit is set at. So if I'm using a 15-degree V bit, it's going to come from 0 and it's going to take whatever normal passes it needs to. And it's going to, carve those out, multiple passes and everything, and clean out that pocket. No problem whatsoever. On the male, let me just kind of draw this out with some lines here. From our Z0 position, we have what's called a start depth and a flat depth, right? So let's draw the line here. All right. From our Z0 down to that line, that's the start depth. Okay. So in this case here, that's the depth, that 0.25, that quarter of an inch in this case. So let's say, my start depth is 0.25, and then my flat depth, which is that gap in between, is 0.0625, right? Or I'm sorry, I just lied to you. This is my my glue gap. This is that 0.05 for a total of 0.3. Now, in this case, when Vectric is calculating the toolpath and it calculates the start depth, it's assuming that material has been milled away. So if I have a start depth other than 0, if I have a start depth of an 1/8 of an inch, a 1/16 of an inch, a 1/2 an inch, it's assuming that material is not there, that it's been milled away, because it's going to plunge the bit down to that 1/8 of an inch, and it's going to start carving there, the start depth. Well, if my start depth on that mel, we'll see how it creates when we look at the toolpath and everything. We'll look and see the depths and all when it creates it here. When it creates that, if it logically, the way it should create, it's going to create that 1/4 of an inch as the start depth. Now that wood is not gone. This is a blank board that we're cutting this mel out of. That wood isn't milled away. So you're either going to damage your machine or you're going to damage your router bit, or something's going to go boom because it's plunging that bit down that 1/4 of an inch, and it is removing, doing the carve or whatever at that material. And we, not, it's all built based on the, the rigidity and the stiffness of the machine, but your Shipokos or other kit type machines are not going to be able to handle that type of cut depth at certain speeds and things like that. And if they are, you're going to have to do some serious clamping or doing some serious, you're going to have to go slow, and everything to, so you don't damage and break your bit or break your machine or whatever the case may be, right? Or your spindle, depending on how strong or big the spindle is and all. We can't do that. So we need our Mel version of this toolpath to get broken up into 3 toolpaths. Now, let's look at how the new VCarve Inlay takes everything that I filled in right here, and let's see what it does. Let's see the toolpaths that it creates. And then we're going to take a second and go the old way. Now, we're already an hour and 15 minutes in, so I don't want to, drag this out too much longer, but we got to get through this because this is the nuts and the bolts of it all, right? This is the toolpath. So let's get our vectors actually into play. Let's get our vectors into play here, okay? I'm going to move this out of the way for a minute, and I'm going to get our vectors in to position here for our actual toolpath vectors. Let's start with the corner inlay vectors. Okay, we'll start with them. Now, the toolpaths are pretty much going to be rinse and repeat, but we have different. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different inlays happening right here. We have 5 different inlay cuts happening right here. So the toolpaths are going to be set up all the same. For each of those, we're going to do 1 right here, okay, for right now. So let's create some sheets. I want to create a new sheet. I'm going to call this my cherry wood, cherry mel, we'll just call it. And I'm going to have some like an ingrained piece of cherry glued up. Let's do another sheet that's my maple mel. Let's do another sheet. It'll be my light walnut. And that'll be it. That'll be for my inlays and all. Now, let's stop and pause for a second. Number 1, let's pause to hit save. And number 2, let's see what we got for questions and stuff. And let's see what kind of conversation you guys are having without me over here. Let's see. Brooks is a great guy, Mark Lindsay. That's for sure. Let's see here. Only 3 likes and 27 watching. What's up with that, guys and girls? Come on now, give me some likes. No, we got everybody jumped in. That's cool. Let's see here. Hey, Gene Kilmer finally made it. Thanks. Cool. Let's see. Y'all are having a conversation with each other. Mark Lindsay also recommends or uses a 15-degree V-bit for his deep inlays. Dinner bell back soon. Wonderful. Hey, Brooks Martin, how you doing? Brooks gave you a shout out a minute ago. We're going to be showing your little tip on making a cool preview, Johnson. Okay, so really no questions yet. So that means that y'all are somewhat following along. I haven't totally lost you just yet. And if I did, throw in some questions if you need to. But let's get started here. New V12 VCarve Inlay toolpath. We're going to see what it does for us. And we're also going to look at how we would lay it out if we didn't have V12 when we were doing the old using our regular VCarve Inlay toolpath, how we would set it up. All right, so here's what I got. I've got a pocket depth of 0.2 is sorry, my pocket depth is 0.3. I don't know where 0.2 came from. My glue gap is going to be 0.05. And my surface gap is going to be 1/16 of an inch. So that's my numbers. That's what I'm working with here and everything. Now, I'm going to use a 15-degree V-bit, the included angle, and the 15-degree V-bit. we'll go 0.2 is good on that. Okay. And let me change the name on this because this particular program, my computer out in the shop has the 15. This one doesn't. 15 DEG bit. Okay, apply and select. All right, so my 15-degree V-bit is going to be making that cut. Let me make sure that I didn't rush through that. Okay, I'm good. All right, now on here, clearance tool, right? Now, the clearance tool, when it comes to the the inlay, the mel inlay and everything, I don't want my V-bit trying to remove all that waste material, which you can. There's no problem with it doing it. It just takes a long time. I'd like to have an end mill, kind of clearing things out. So the size of the end mill, I'm just going to go with just a 1/4 inch. Oh, right there. Now, my plug destination sheet. This is going to be the cherry. These corner ones are going to be the cherry. So it's going to go, the mel is going to pop up in this cherry sheet down here in the corner, the mel vectors and all. Now, the plug outer boundary. Now, I really do not need to mill away a full 18 by, my sheet doesn't need to be 18 by 16, on my mels, right? They just need to be big enough. They just need to be big enough to house whatever size, the material is. Now, right now, all of my sheets are set up for 18 by 15. But hell, that little, excuse my language, that diamond, that little circle, the little diamond, and things like that, the teardrops, they don't need to be, but on a sheet, the whole thing was laid out for a 12 by 12 area, right? And stuff like that. So we could take that extra time and set the sheet size up to the size that it is. Just know that when it's asking for the plug outer boundary, it's either going to be a vector offset or it's going to be the sheet limits. Now, it's basing it off the size of the male sheets that we have laid out, not the sheet that we're doing the female on and all. The sheet, whatever size the males are. So if our if our board is 5 by 5 and we set it up, the sheet up is a 5 by 5, that's going to be the boundary if we use the sheet as the boundary. Okay. We also have to consider, keep in mind clamps, right? If we're going to have clamps in the way, we can't use the sheet as the limits. We got to have a vector offset, right? That kind of thing. But in this case, I'm going to just let it do the full sheet, mill it away, and have the females. So we're going to, we'll call this my cherry corner rays, because the inner rays are also cherry corner rays. Now, when I calculate this toolpath, let's see exactly what gets created for us, right? Okay. So right away, what gets created is on the sheet 1, my main sheet here, the female and all, we have our we have 2 toolpaths. We have the clear that is the 1/4 inch end mill, and then we have our V-bit that's going down and doing its depth. And let me see here. That's my 15 degree, and that's my 1/4 inch end mill. Yeah. So let's look and see what the 1/4 inch end mill is doing. Now on the visual, I've got, let me turn off the colors here. I'm going to go to just a regular maple, a clear, kind of a clear maple instead of this ingrain. We'll talk about that ingrain in just a moment. We'll talk about images and graphics and cool stuff. Stick around for that. Come on, stick around with me for that, guys and girls. I know it's getting late. We're an hour and 25 minutes in, but I need you to be able to physically see what's going on here. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Now, for the most part, the vectors were large enough on this pocket and everything that the 1/4 inch end mill could actually take some material and all. And then the V bit is going to come in and, you know, clean everything where the 1/4 inch mill couldn't get to, right? Sharp corners and details all the way down to, so that's going to be my pocket, right? So those two tools, the 1/4 inch mill, all cutting down to a depth. If we turn myself around here, we're a depth of 0.3 inches deep. Okay, so that's going to be that. Now let's transition over to the cherry mill board. Okay, let's show over that. And again, I'm going to turn off the ingrain, the master ingrain that I got going on here. Talk about that in just a moment. And now we have, this is our plug cuts, right? So we have a 1/4 inch end mill that's removing a majority of the material. And then we have our V-bit that's kind of doing the edge work. So let's preview this. Now, when we preview this, right, I want to kind of go in and look at how they have this calculating the toolpath, because I am seeing there's levels here, right? And all. I am seeing that there's levels here. So it's taking passes and all. Let's preview that visible toolpath. Oh, I should have turned on animation. Let me stop that for a second. I'm going to reset that and turn off that color. I want to turn on the animation for a moment. I want to see how, if it's doing it in the mill and passes, right? So my plug 1/4 inch bit, the visible toolpath, it is. So even though the start depth on this technically is a 0.25 inches with a flat depth of 0.03, right? The new VCarve Inlay toolpath has made it to where it knows that that's the start depth and the flat depth, but it's cutting it in passes. So that's cool. That's great, right? It wasn't like that old school, right? So we're going to look at how that toolpath on the old school method, how we need to break it up to do our, to get to where we want to get. But the new VCarve Inlay, Vectric's on it, man. They're on the ball. They have this taking those pass steps. So that's the first pass, right? And then it's doing the second and the third, and it's going all the way down. So now we can pretty much, we'll stop this. I've seen what all I want to see. I'm going to turn off the animation. We're going to preview all the toolpaths, let it just kind of race through and preview those two things in the background. And that's doing exactly what I want it to do. That new toolpath, it knows that I'm trying to reach 0.3. It knows I have, my 0.05 glue gap. It knows that my space above is a 1/16 of an inch. And it's doing all of that for me. Plus, it's doing it in passes. I'm super stoked with that. That's cool. Now I'm not having to that's what I'm not having to do. I'm not having to like do the math and calculation. All right, now let's look at the these toolpaths old school way, right? So let's go back to the female cut. So this is for those that, when I say old school, you know, version 11, 11.5, 10, you know, that kind of thing. The folks that don't have 12. So we select our vectors. It would be a normal VCarve toolpath. We would have a start depth of 0 and a flat depth of 0.3. Okay. We're going to be using our 15-degree V-bit. And we would be using a 1/4-inch end mill. Okay. When we calculate that toolpath, again, the female is no problem. The female is going to calculate just like it should with the passes and stuff like that. We're starting at 0, cutting to 0.3, so it's going to take its natural passes depending on what my bits are set at and everything. So that's great. And so it'll take those multiple passes to for that cut and everything. All right. So we end up with that same. Now, on the Mel old method, select our vectors, VCarve toolpath. Our start depth is 0.25 and our flat depth is 0.05 for a total of 0.3. Now, start depth, it's plunging that bit straight down and it's carving that material away. And it's literally going the point, it's taking the full depth, 0.03. It's plunging the bit to the 0.25, but then it's also cutting down to the 0.03 or 05. So the total of 0.3, it's taking that full 0.3 cut in one pass. And this, with this, you know, here, it is, if we look, let's go to the corner here. It is plunging that bit down to the full 0.3 cut in one single pass, and it's doing all of that work. That's where things go wrong. That's where we're breaking bits and we're breaking stuff. We can't do that. So we need to break up our passes. Okay. We need to do this. If we're doing the old school method, new school, no worries, man. All the V12, it's already calculating those passes in for us. That's great, Vectric. Good job on that one. For us, if we don't have version 12, we got to break it down. So let's look at how we would break this down. Let's get back over here. So I have to decide how much material, how much I want to plunge in per pass, right? This plunge is taking a full cut. And let's say that I want to go, let's say I want to take, trying to come up with a good number. Let's say 1/8 of an inch per pass. All right, let's say 1/8 of an inch. So I need to break up that 0.125 between a start depth and a flat depth. Now my flat depth for each pass is going to be the 0.05. My flat depth for every pass is going to be the 0.05. Okay. My first pass, I'm trying to figure out the best way to draw this where we can, like, I can put the stuff on here. I don't have a pen and pad, right? My first pass my start depth, I'm going to go with a start depth of a 16th. Uh, 16.05. Hold on. I want my total pass to be an eighth of an inch. So Lane, why are we getting stupid here? Let me see here. Let me break up my calculator. Oh my God. 0.125 minus 0.05 equals 0.075. Jesus, Laney. So my start depth is going to be 0.075. Let's get that on the board right here. Try that again, 0.075. And then my flat depth is going to be that 0.05. Okay, so that's going to be the first pass. Now, those two together is an eighth of an inch. So I'm trying to, I wish I could freehand this. I don't know how well I can freehand point. No, I can't freehand a circle. So we'll do it this way. All right. So over here, so that's 0.125. So that's going to be my first pass. Okay. Now, on the second pass, again, I'm going to have a flat depth on all three passes. I'm going to have a flat depth of 0.05, like my glue gap flat depth. Now, my total cut is 0.3, right? So that's where when this eighth of an inch, if I take, 0.3, and I minus 0.125, right? I got 0.175, right? So I can do the same kind of take another eighth of an inch, if you will, but I've already taken an eighth. So my start depth has to account for that eighth because there's that material has been gone, right? So that first toolpath, it's taking away this eighth of an inch. So that material is not there. So my next start depth, I'm going to take that eighth of an inch plus the 0.075. Okay. So 0.125 plus 0.075 equals 0.2. So that's going to be my start depth for the second pass, 0.2. And then 0.2 plus 0.05 is 0.25. That's my quarter, right? So let's come over here. 0.25. That's my second pass, right? That's how much material I've moved away. Now, that material has gone up to a quarter, right? So now my 0.3 minus the 0.25, I only have 0.05 left. There's not a whole lot. So I could probably take that in two passes instead of three because we're not, I'm only going 0.3. I'm not going 0.375 or 0.4 or things like that, So in this situation, we're going 0.3. So I only need to do it in two passes. I don't need to do it in three. If I was going 0.375 or 3/8, that's different. There would be a third pass in there. So that 0.05, I can actually do that. We're going to just go 0.25 here, 0.25 and 0.05. So this pass will be 0.25. Now, remember an eighth of an inch of that material is already gone. So when I'm plunging to 0.25, I'm only taking an eighth of an inch of material, right? My bit's only plunging into an eighth of an inch of material. It's like taking an eighth of an inch cut. So but which my V-bit can handle. If I was going 0.375 for my final depth, you know, for my cut and everything, then at that point I would want to add a third toolpath in there, and I would take another same 0.075, you know, quarter of an inch, 0.07 plus 0.075. I would just do another one of these, that third one, to get that depth. But in this case, those are the only two I need. So for my mel cut, I don't know if I, again, go watch Stefan's video. He's better. He's more verbally understandable when he's explaining it, because he has pictures with his numbers. I'm trying to draw as I'm explaining it. But on my mel, I'm going to, if I was doing this old school, I would have two toolpaths. So I would select the mel vectors. It would be a VCarve toolpath. First one would be start depth of 0.075 with a flat depth of 0.05. And this would be mel 1. Calculate that. And what that will do is, let's go over here. Preview that visible toolpath. It's going to take that first 1/8 of an inch of material away, right? So it's when it's all said and done and everything, I'm down to 1/8 of an inch. You can verify that by the numbers at the bottom right of the screen on my computer screen here, that 1/8 of an inch. Now my second toolpath is going to be 0.25 with a flat depth of 0.05. And I'm going to calculate that toolpath. This will be my mel 2. All right, whatever you want to name it, right? So you know. And that's going to plunge down. So you can see here, let's look at the blue lines here. So it's plunging down the 1/8 of an inch that's already gone, and it's only just making another 1/8 of an inch pass. It's making a 0.13 inch pass, so a little slightly over 1/8 of an inch on that second one, which is a very respectable pass depth. Nothing wrong with that. So preview the visible toolpath. It's going to come and it's going to mill all of that away. So old school, we had to account for those pass depths on a deep carve. On a regular VCarve inlay with a 60-degree V-bit, we're doing a shallow inlay. We just do it in one pass, you know, that kind of thing. But on a deep inlay, and usually my inlays would be around 3/8 of an inch deep. I just rounded it to 0.3 for math's sake and numbers and all. But with that, we have to think about, we can't have that bit cutting 0.3 in one pass, you know, and stuff like that. So certain machines can't handle that and everything. So we would break it up into multiple passes. Well, in this case, it only took two toolpaths, two passes to get it done, get the job done. But the Vectric inlay, VCarve Inlay in version 12, does the passes for us. So that's great. It breaks it up for the passes for us. Now, please, somebody, give me a show of hands, and let's make sure that we understand that. We understand that if we don't have version 12, when it comes to the female, we just calculate 0 start depth and whatever your flat depth is, right? But when it comes to the male, if you're doing it the old school way, you don't have version 12, then you're going to have a large start depth. In this case, it was 0.25 with a 0.05 flat depth, right? And that means it's plunging that bit into 0.25 inches of material. And that material is not gone. It's there. So we have to break that up a little bit. So in this case, we made 2 toolpaths. Taking 1/8 of an inch on the first pass and 0.13 inches on the second, right? So our flat depth is always 0.05. Whatever our glue gap is, that's what our flat depth is for the mel. If you're breaking up your toolpaths, the flat depth is always going to be consistent, 0.05. You do the math with your start depths and everything. So 0.075 plus 0.05 is 1/8 of an inch. Bingo. On the next one, the 1/8 of an inch is already gone, so we're taking that, and then we're going another point. We're doing a 1/8 of an inch plus the 0.075. In this case, it was 0.25. So we're taking another 1/8 of an inch and then a 0.05 flat depth. So it's technically that whole cut is doing a 0.13 inch cut. So it's plunging in 0.13, just slightly over 1/8. So basically 2 1/8 inch passes, if you will, right? That's what it's doing. And so that creates the mill. And all together, those two cuts and everything equal 0.3, for our mill and everything. For our female. All right. Now, the VCarve inlay, we just have to tell it what we want for a space surface gap. We'll use their name, surface gap. What we want for that gap that's in when the two plug in the male and the female together, that space in between the two, when it's fully pressed down, that little air gap between the male and the female, in this case, 1/16 of an inch, our surface gap. We need to tell it what our pocket depth is. That's the female pocket, 0.3. And we need to tell it what our glue gap is, in this case, 0.05. We tell it what V-bit we're using. We tell it what clearance tool we're using. We tell it where the male plug is going to go, in this case, the cherry insulation. And we're going to use the sheets as the limits, right? So it's going to mill all the material away, just leaving that inlay raised. We're going to come and glue that together, press it together, weigh it down, whatever you want to do. And then you have a choice on the waist for this first glue up. Saw it away, bandsaw it away, or use your CNC to mill it away. Now, in this case, I'm gonna have the CNC mill it away, but I'm gonna make sure that that bit does not come down to the surface of my cutting board, right? I'm gonna have it come down to where there's just a few thousandths of an inch above that cutting board. Now, the toolpath, for me, I was doing it. I would zero out on the top of my board, Z0, material surface. And then I would raise it up a few thousandths of an inch, 20 thousandths of an inch, 0.02. You need to go low, you can go 0.01, 10 thousandths of an inch. I just want to raise it up slightly above the surface, and I'm going to re-zero out there. 0. Okay. Depending on how thick my backer board is, how much material I'm removing, I'm probably not going to surface it all the way in one pass, right? So we have to think about on your machine, on your CNC machine, if I'm literally clamped on the table, right? My job is set up to use the material surface as 0, and I'm cutting down to a depth, right? Well, depending on how much material I've actually got to remove of that backer to get down to that, 10 thousandths of an inch above my surface, I got to kind of do the math. So if I zero out there, if I call that 0, that 10 thousandths of an inch, that's not 0. That's the bottom of my, how much material I got to remove, right? So I got to kind of know how much material I'm removing. But when I cut down my 0 start depth and I take my passes with my surfacing bit, I'm cutting down, let's say it's a 1/4 of an inch. I'm cutting down a 1/4 of an inch. But if a 1/4 of an inch is the top of my waste board, then I'm going to be cutting down to 0.24 or even 0.23, right? 0.23 or something, just leaving that 10 or 20 thousandths of an inch of material there. Do you understand? I'm not milling all the way down to my surface. I do not want my surface bit making contact with the top of my cutting board at all. I want it to mill away the waste, but I want to leave a little bit. I mean, just a little bit, right? Few thousandths of an inch of material that I'll be able to sand when it's all said and done. But all I'm doing is getting rid of that waste so I can do my next inlay. It's all about that, getting that next inlay done. So that inlay, when we calculate the toolpath, we've got our toolpath calculator here. I'm going to get rid of this, 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 and this. I'm going to delete those. All right. So I've got my male 1/4 inch bit, my male 15-degree V bit, cutting that. And then on the female, I've got my 1/4 inch bit and my 15-degree V bit, cutting that. Let's get rid of this. Now, that's inlay number 1, right? So now I'm going to turn off those vectors. Okay, and then my, let's come up to my, what else is cherry? My short razor cherry as well. Okay, so these are my next toolpath. VCarve Inlay, nothing changes. It's all the same. Okay, nothing changes there. Same settings. This time I'm outputting to the same cherry sheet. It's going to be a different cherry sheet, but I'll just output to the same cherry sheet. But I probably should create a cherry sheet number 2 just so it doesn't throw everybody off. Let's create another. And then in this last 10 minutes, I want to show a cool technique so we can kind of see our finished product as an end grain cutting board with an inlay, courtesy of information from Michael Meslick in lieu of Brooks Martin. So once again, thanks for that, Brooks Martin. We're going to see that technique here in just a second. So on my sheets, I'm going to really quickly create a new sheet. This will be my cherry 2. Name it, whatever it is. And of course, it would be sized accordingly, whatever size. And if I needed to, like, let me just show you this here. So I can get that inlay out of, a 12 3/4 by 12 3/4 board, right? That's all I need. I don't need to make it the same size as my cutting board for that male inlay. So I could set up the inlay for that and everything on that male board, but I didn't. Let's, this is going to be cherry number 2. Sheet is raise and calculate, right? So, got to select the vectors and calculate. So this is going to do that set of vectors. So now each one of these, the teardrops, the circle, the we got to figure out the order of the cut, right? So these rays are full here, right? But they're under, the short rays are under the circle, right? My long corner rays are above the circle. So if I'm looking at this, here's the order of the cuts, all right? The first cut is going to be the inner boundary and the teardrops. They're the same material, okay? The inner boundary and the teardrops will be the first inlay toolpath. That'll be the first one that gets done on the table. Glued up, milled down, everything. That border, full rectangular border, and the teardrop or the water drops. Next, the short rays are next. They're going to get milled, glued in, surface down, and they're done. The next inlay is going to be the circle. That'll be the third. That'll be my third inlay. The circle's next. It's going to mill right over those, short rays and all, because it lays over them. It's going to mill all that wood away, and then we're going to inlay the male cut, the male circle, glue that in. Next cut will be my corner rays. That'll be the fourth inlay that gets done. The corner rays get done next. And then the final inlay is the center diamond, because it's on top of everything, right? So that is the order that the inlays will get cut and glued up, carved, glued up, carved, glued up. So outer boundary teardrops or water drops, inner rays, inner circle, corner rays, and then finally the center diamond or triangle, in that order. And the toolpath settings are all the same. The glue gap, the surface gap, and the pocket depth, it's all the same. It doesn't change for any one of them. It's just, you got to select your correct vectors and all. And it's the full circle. It's the full rectangle. When I'm saying full, I'm not talking about the ones that we trimmed up for visual purposes. I'm talking about the full inner circle. Let me turn this off. That is the inlay for the inner circle. The full inner boundary, the full inner border, that inlay. So it's the inner border and the teardrops, water drops. This is one inlay. That's one inlay. Lay that out. That's going to be cut out of the same material. And then the second inlay, like I said, is going to be the circle, or I'm sorry, the short rays. The short rays are the second one. Then the circle, then the corner rays, and then the center part, the center rectangle. And that center rectangle is, we called it the inner diamond, right? That's the last toolpath. Now, let's see what this project would actually look like if it was a 3D preview, like in the preview here. Now, when you're setting up your jobs and everything, and I want you to pay close attention to this last part. Now, understand something. What I'm about to show you really is only able to be done in the Spire, because the Spire, we can build models, and we're building a model with like a 0 level, but we are building a model. So if you have Desktop and Pro, please watch. Don't run off just yet. But I'd like you to see this. Now, one of the things is in your software, when you're looking at previews of your toolpaths and things, you have these materials, these woods and things and metals and plastics and all that are kind of stored in a folder on your computer. Now, there are a couple of places where they're stored, but the main place is if I go to the open the application data folder, there is a bitmap texture folder here, and then we have wood, metal, stone, miscellaneous, and things. Now there's a README document that kind of explains about textures and all, but in the wood texture is where all those little pictures, when you choose maple or you choose cherry or walnut, this is kind of where it's pulling those images from, and we can actually add images to this. So I have a folder. I went online and I have a folder called wood samples, and I went through and I grabbed some walnut ingrain, maple ingrain, kind of a light walnut ingrain, an oak, cherry, a beech, and an ash, right? I just kind of grabbed just some different, contrasting colored materials and stuff. And those pictures, nice cropped images and everything, those were copied into this folder. So you can see those ingrain images are now in there. And when the software is restarted, you will then be able to see those materials in, you'll be able to see those materials in your software, right? And you'll be able to use them and all. Well, little known fact that when we are working with our software, and we come over here, it's not a little known fact. I mean, it's a fact. When we're setting up our job, we can immediately choose what we want our material to look like in that 3D view, you know, as a default and stuff. And typically you it's not based on what material you're actually using. It's for visual purposes only. Some people will, you know, set it to maple. I like maple. I work in maple all the time just because I want to focus on the cuts. Maple's a clean kind of white background, light background. I shouldn't say white, a light background. I can focus on my carves and all, but we can make it look like anything we want. So what I'm going to do is, just for the initial setup of this, I'm going to have my main board here, this 18 by 15 by 3/4 inch board. I'm going to have it look like a dark walnut, kind of an ingrain and everything. Okay, so that's going to be my default kind of image. And if we were to look at my 3D view, that's what we're looking at here. I'm going to turn off all the vectors for right now. And so that's what my walnut ingrain looks like, right? Okay. Now, for the purpose of seeing what our inlays are going to look like, we can take our vectors that we created, and these are the vectors that I was slicing up and everything, and I said these are going to be used later. I'm going to grab those vectors right now. So I'm going to take my my light kind of walnut vectors there. We'll turn those on. My maple inlay vectors, that broken up circle, we'll turn that one on. I'm going to have my short rays. Let me see here. Let's go up to my, bear with me just a second here. My small points. Not those. Keep going. I got to get to my class stuff. My corner. Why can't I see? That's what I'm looking for. My corner and vectors are there. And those, I don't think I made a trim inlay. I don't think, did I not make, bear with me a second. That goes away. That goes away. There's my teardrops. Thank you. My vector. All right. I got to make one more set of vectors really quickly. Dadgummit. Hold on a minute. Let me turn all these off. One quick second. I need, turn all this off for a minute. My rays, my short rays, that I got to trim for this visual purpose. Hold on a second, guys and girls. Stick with me for just a second. I'm going to copy these to my class trim layer. And I'm also going to copy my circle. My circle, I'm going to copy that to that trim layer. Dadgummit, I almost had it all. Copy to class trim. All right, let's turn off the originals. Let's turn on our class trim layer. All right, let me take my scissors really quickly and make this very quick here. That goes away. That goes away. That and that. That and that. That and that. That and that. And that. Oh, not that one. Almost done. 2 more cuts. Okay. These are the layers. These are the vectors I need. Let me, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Let me move those to inlay short rays. Wonderful. All right. It says that name already exists. What? Let's just do in trim. Okay. Let's turn on that. Beautiful. That. Wonderful. My corner rays. Excellent. And my water drops. Yay. Okay. Now, oh, you son of a gun. I got one more. One more. Give me a second here, ladies and gentlemen. I got to do one more. Copy to. So sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get this cleaned up really quickly here. Show only this. Okay. All right. Now, you see what I did there? I was in another layer already, and I didn't set my trim layer as the active layer, and when I trimmed, it threw them all on top of that layer, and that's fine. That's fine that it did that, because I can just get rid of what doesn't belong. Okay, that's perfect. All right, so these, now let's get back to what I was trying to teach you here. We're going to take these vectors here and we're going to create a model of them. We're going to create a flat shape that has no height to it. And we're going to call, I'll just call this my cherry. Okay, cherry inlay. And we're going to set it to merge, and we're going to click create. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create this inlay that we see here, but we don't see, we just see the green because it's kind of buried into this zero plane, if you will. I'm going to go into my components and I'm going to turn off the zero plane for a moment. And I'm going to turn off these rays here. And what you're going to see is this inlay that I did, it's taking on the parent form, right? So if I click on this and select this, I can go to the properties. Now, if we go to the properties over here on the right, if I double click on this to go into the properties on the left, I mean, at the top, if I go into the properties here, you'll notice that in the properties window, it really doesn't give us the option of changing our material color or anything like that, right? But if we go into the property windows on our 3D view, down here, we have an appearance that we can change the appearance. And right now it's same as the parent. Parent being my master walnut, dark walnut ingrained background, right? Well, I can come in and change this as a solid color. I can change it as a material. I can change it as a color of the other children. I can make it match. In this case, I want to use a material. And on that material, I want that to be my cherry ingrain. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose the cherry ingrain. Okay. And I'm going to close that out. Now, let's come over to my components and deselect. Now we can see that cherry inlay, right? Well, now notice that my background here is grayed out. We can't see that dark walnut and everything. That's because I have the zero plane turned off. I'm going to turn the zero plane back on, and that's going to be my dark inlay and everything. And I want the cherry level to be below the zero plane, so that way I can see that inlay there. Okay. Now I'm going to make my next set of inlay. Let's go over here and let's turn on our light walnut inlay. That's going to be my border. I'm going to use my menu here to select all the vectors on that layer. It makes it a little easier for selecting them. And I'm going to come in here and create a model. Again, zero plane. I'll merge it with the others. And I'll call this my light walnut. Could be maple, could do that. No, I'll just go light walnut. And we'll click apply. Now, once again, on that component that I just created in the 3D view here, that component that's created right now, it's currently taking on the parent, again, that dark walnut, that parent and everything. I'm going to change that to a material color. And I'm going to change that one to be my light walnut ingrain. All right. And then we'll move that down in the list. Zero plane is going to end up kind of being on top of everything here. So now we have kind of that view. All right, let's keep going. Our teardrops was also that light walnut. So let's turn on water drops, whatever. Teardrops, water drops, let's turn those on and let's select those vectors. And let's create, I could have created those with the other model as well, but we'll just do another one. This will be my water drops. And it's light walnut. This is all for visual purposes, right, ladies and gentlemen? It's just to give that visual. Like if I have to send a cutting board to a customer or something, I can show them what it kind of looks like. Now, once again, by default in the 3D view, it's taking on the parent, that dark walnut. So we're going to come in to our model there. Let me go back to my component tree here. And we're going to change that to a use material. And we'll make it that light walnut. And we'll move it down below the zero plane. Okay. Now, change the combine mode to merge. Make sure that layer, my teardrop layer, is active. It is. Wonderful. Let me go back into my properties, and you see for some reason it changed as the parent. Let's do that again. Use material. All right, there we go. There's our little teardrops. And then we're going to do our circle and our rectangle. Those two are going to be the maple. Right. And so we have our diamond, class diamond right there. We'll turn that vector on. Yep. All right. I got one. We're going to have one little that one's going to stick right above the maple, but you get the point. So that's going to show up there. Let me turn on my circle here. Bear with me just a second. There we go. All right. Those, let's select all the vectors on that. And then let's select we're going to create that flat shape, 0 depth. This will be our maple. And it's a maple ingrain. And grain. We're going to click apply. In our 3D view, we're going to click on that. Make sure that we click apply and close this tool. Make sure that that same as parent, we use the material. And this one's going to be my maple ingrain. Okay. And in my components, we'll move that below the 0 plane. All right. Now I have one mess up right there, but you get the point. So basically, we can kind of see that inlay, right? We can see that inlay in that wood grain. Like if I'm doing an ingrain cutting board and I'm using a, ingrain cherry, ingrain maple and all, we can pretty much simulate that with the wood. Normally we're used to, when we're looking at toolpaths and everything, when we're looking at toolpath preview simulations, we're looking at, a certain material and we're carving in there and we're adding color, like, we're doing a fill color or something like that. Well, this allows us to view that as a kind of a wood with a wood look, right? Now, I'm going to take it one step further. And I'm going to turn on a model that I created earlier. And I'm going to, on this model here, on this particular component, this is going to be my parent. And then I'm going to turn on another model, which is kind of a juice groove, if you will, right? And the close, we're going to, on here, all of these, all the inlays right now, they're all 0 start depth. So they're all hidden right now by this block. But we're going to create a new level. And we're going to take all of these bad boys right here. Let me select them. And I'm going to drag them up into this level 2, where level 2 is adding to level 1, right? And then I'm going to turn off the 0 plane because my block of wood will act as the 0 plane at this point. And then let's take a look at this maple. I think the cherry needs to get turned on too. Right? And level 2 is going to be a add. It's all going to sit on top. And then there we go. Level 1 has to be on top of level 2. So you kind of start with the top down. And so this gives me a realistic look at what my butcher block or cutting board and everything is going to look like with the inlay in it, right? And so again, this technique was passed along from Mike Meslick to Brooks Martin. Brooks Martin shared the information with me. I thought it was a very cool technique. So once again, thank you, Brooks, for that. It's very awesome and everything. But now, I mean, that is just a very cool way. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but it's an Aspire thing. You got to be able to build models and all. So there is a workaround for desktop and pro that doesn't do the models and all. It's going to be colors and everything, kind of like, you know, that paint preview and stuff. But the you know, it's just one of those things. So hopefully everybody stuck around for that and everything. And but I think it's awesome. Brooks had a conversation with Mike, and like I said, Mike is old school Vectric, you know, been around for some time. And then he shared that information with me the other day. I think Mark Lindsay said he shared it with him too. So Brooks has been trying to spread the word. I asked Brooks to come on. He's not set up for streaming, but said gave me his blessing to pass it on. And I just thought I thought it was actually pretty cool. I mean, I can now have a realistic look. Like if I was making a walnut ingrain cutting board with an inlay, I can make a realistic look of what that's going to look like, except for my one. I got to trim that vector, but I can get that visual, and I can look at my wood color combinations and everything like that. And here's another thing, because we can use images, ladies and gentlemen, because we can use images as that, I can do my glue up of my cutting board blank, and I can use that image for the base or the zero plane if I'm not building this model. I just built this model to show the juice groove and all that stuff. But I can use that, you know, I can take that image, all of the material, the end grain that I glue up for all the inlays and everything, I can take a picture of those and I can import those pictures in to my folder, and I can use them as an option. Now, I don't always have to go to the open application data folder, to the bitmap textures and the wood and paste them there. In the preview simulation, I can use the menu at the very top here, and I can add a new texture from here, right? So I can, if I've got the photos that I just took with my camera, if I send them over to my documents or my pictures on my computer, I can import that new texture from here, or I could just copy and paste from one folder to another. There's a couple of ways to get it done, right? But once they're stored in there, we can now use those images to create that simulation. And again, these models that are creating that simulation, they have no height to them. There's zero. So each of the model heights, when we're looking at the property, is zero. Okay, zero model height. All it is it's just creating this zero height model so that we can add a texture color to it, a wood texture color to it, to end up with, you know, this final result. Very cool stuff. All right. Check out Stefan Forsays. Stefan, if you're ever watching one of my videos, let me know if I pronounce that right. Forsays. Forseilles. Forsays. I think the double L is silent. Or it could be Forseilles. I'm not sure. But Stefan did a great job on deep inlays. When you're looking for his video, just type in deep inlays in the YouTube search. Look for the thumbnail of the YouTube play button. He does a phenomenal job with his graphics and the pop-ups of the text on the graphics and his voice explaining it step by step on those deep inlays. Watch it. It's good information. And then hopefully this information was pretty decent with you too as well. All right, all right, all right. All right, well, let's see here. Let's see here. Wait, hold on a second now. Rob Sandstrom. Rob Sandstrom has some great tutorials. Let me see what you. Hold on, I want to see the conversation you'll have. By the way, offset overlays, same issue with multiple with epoxy. Yeah, so Rob does some great tutorials on epoxy and everything. I'm just now getting into epoxy. We did a class, a private class last week or something, talking about, or the week before last, talking about epoxy. Is my first like epoxy inlay project and everything. It's getting pretty cool. But all right, everybody. Well, hopefully you got something out of this. Check out, if you want to make sense of this, of everything that I was teaching you tonight, definitely check out Stefan Forselli's video, Deep Inlays, a detailed look. You know, like again, his thumbnail on his YouTube video is the YouTube play button, like a big butcher block YouTube play button. The new VCarve Inlay toolpath in version 12 automatically calculates the passes for the mel inlay as well as the VML. So that's phenomenal. So we don't have to really break it up. We don't have to, you know, we just got to plug in our 3 numbers and then, you know, our vectors, and we're good to go. The old method, remember now, from the 0, your start depth, whatever it may be, depending on how you're cutting, that's Vectric assumes that wood's not there. So it plunges that bit to the full flat depth cut, right? That start depth plus whatever your flat depth is, and it's taking it in one pass, not multiple passes. So if you got to break it up, break it up. Your flat depth, if you do have the old method, your flat depth is always your glue gap, you know, 0.0, whatever it is, you know, a 1/16 of an inch and all. When you're watching Stefan videos, he's talking in millimeters. So he uses a 1 millimeter glue gap, a 2 millimeter surface gap, the gap between the mel and the plugs. His female pocket is 8 millimeters deep. That's how much of the plug is going to fill. You know, his pocket is 8 millimeters deep, and 7 millimeters is how much the plug is going to fill before that 1 millimeter gap. He's working in millimeters. It's much easier. The math is much easier. And you'll see in his graphics and everything. Can't say enough about that video. I really, really, really like that video. Great detail, great graphics, good, clean, clear explanation. All right, everybody. Let's see here. Is where you can place the picks to access through use material drop-down menu. Yes. Yes. Brooks Martin shared the program data, Vectric, Aspire, bitmap, and everything, textures and all. And basically, let me just show you what he's trying to say in here. So when we are looking at the file menu and we're open up the application data folder, right? So we're in program data, Vectric, in my case, Aspire 12, and then there's bitmap textures, and then there's wood, metal, stone, and everything, right? So that's going through the open application data folder. You know, if I'm just looking on my C drive trying to find a program data folder, it's not, it's kind of a hidden folder, right? So, but if I go through file, open application data folder, it's there. But the folder that you can actually access personally is, let's go to the file explorer for this. It's on your C drive, users, public documents, Vectric files, material images. And you can drop your photos in there as well, and they'll show up in the list also. So your C drive, users, public documents, Vectric files, and material images. If you can't get to your program data, to get to the program data that Brooks is showing, you can just simply go to File, Open Application Data folder. It'll open that folder, and then you can see bitmap textures right there, and you can drop it into one of those folders as well. So there's a couple of places that you can get to. Now, if you do the import on the preview, like if I'm in the preview and I come up here and I import adding a new texture, it's actually going to drop that file in the that public documents, Vectric files, bitmap images. It's going to throw it in that folder there when you use that add new textures. But either way, it'll all pull it the same. They read from both locations and everything. And so there's like, there's 3 different places that you can put it and stuff. So thank you, Brooks, once again for all the information. And hey, yes, Deep Inlays by Stefan, Stephan, Stefan Frisalis, that YouTube. So the Fanatical Artisan, have you been with us the whole time? Because that's exactly who I've been talking about, referring the videos to. His video on Deep Inlays, a detailed look with that YouTube button thumbnail, is, I absolutely highly recommend everybody should watch that video. He does a phenomenal job with that. And I've been saying that since the beginning of this class. So Stefan, Stephan, Frisalis, or Frisalis, Forseillas. Phenomenal gentleman. Great tutorial. Y'all have a wonderful day. And until next time, we'll see you soon. It is a great video. It is. His video is phenomenal. That's who I learned from. And I can't say enough about his video is phenomenal. Everybody should go watch it after they leave this class tonight, if they're not too tired. All right, everybody. Y'all have a wonderful evening, and we'll catch you next time. But Brooks Martin, thanks for the tip. I love this. Looks great. And let me get out of that to put back up there. That's awesome to be able to see that ingrained wood picture look like an inlay on my screen in my preview. All right, everybody. Y'all have a great evening. See you soon.